So, Joe, Prayers for the Stolen. What did you think?
I was really impressed by this movie. It's got some really lovely and really intriguing symmetries and parallels quite early on that really drew me into it. So it cuts from like these extreme close-ups of bugs and ants carrying leaves across the forest floor to this quarry, and the neatness of the quarry and the scale of the destruction the workers wreak upon it is really frightening, but it kind of contrasts in a really interesting way with the bugs. And when you see those massive explosions in the quarry, the workers are facing the camera head on. It's really quite a strangely confrontational shot. And then soon after that, the soldiers drive past, and the little girls, one of them says to the other, "You don't look them in the eye." And so there's these strange kind of circuities, these loops that sort of pull you through the text that I struggled to kind of work out any sort of precise meaning or symbolism within them. There are moments where one of the girls gives that weird presentation about things that are alive and things that are not alive, and she suggests that stones are alive as well. And so there is a sense of the environment of belonging to that very particular place, and this emphasis on nature. At one point, Anna makes a sculpture of herself made out of things from her environment. And so this emphasis on nature seems to give the rest of the film's events a kind of inexorability. Everything feels kind of strangely fateful and inescapable. It reminded me as well of, do you remember that film by Narika Sefer that we both liked, Looking for Venera? It reminded me of that insofar as there seemed to hover around these little girls this almost suffocating sense of imminent violence. And so early on, when she's sort of play fighting with that boy, it just made me feel kind of uneasy, because it just felt like there was this sort of incipient danger, something in the air. It uses the classic technique of like using the classroom teacher to say something profound about, the broader story, which of course we've seen many times before, but it's very effective and it's done really nicely here. The teacher gives that one lesson about perception. Things in this town are upside down. And then one of the bold girls comes and rights the chair and sits down on it. And as this is going on, this kind of coming of age story, a really affecting story of these three little girls, in the background, you've got talk of children being kidnapped, and these soldiers, you're uncertain what their role is. Are they like protectors, or are they some kind of enemy force? And they're dropping this pesticide, which should be dropped on the poppy fields, but clearly they're in the pay of the drug dealers who cultivate the poppy fields. And so they're just dumping it wherever. There's like a very brief moment on the news where they're talking about corruption amid the police. And every time you see a police car, everyone reacts in this sort of nervous way. And so the whole film is completely saturated with violence, even though we very rarely see any. And there is the influence of the drug cartels is this kind of invisible malevolence pressing down on the whole community. There is also, I think, a really powerful sort of sub-story, if you like, of her mother. And you see the effect the impotence and fear has on her, how ugly she becomes at times. There's that horrible scene where she's just sitting there drinking beer, and she says to Anna, "Get me another beer," and the girl refuses. She tosses her a bottle. It's a really ugly, unpleasant scene. You know how much this mother loves her child, but you also know how terrified she is for the girl, and how crippling that becomes over time, because we spend a long time in this family's company. There is also as well that lovely blend of like magical coming of age stuff within this horribly toxic environment. So one of the games the girls play is like practicing being psychic, and they're good at it. They guess each other's numbers and they guess their facial features. But even that is kind of corrupted, because it seems to suggest that these girls know more than they should. They understand the environment in which they exist, and that's tragic and heartbreaking. And there is the moment where the girl says to her mother, what if that's our teacher? They can hear something happening in the distance. What if that's my teacher? How would you feel if this was happening to you? And you just get the suffocating sense that these are completely impossible questions. And when the teachers themselves try and stand up and they ask for answers, and there is this like willful ignorance and silence among the townsfolk, it's both infuriating, but at the same time you completely understand it, you know, because first and foremost they have to look after their children. So I found it very, very affecting, really compelling. And then, of course, right towards the end, they come for the girls, and it's terrifying. And when they take her friend, and there's that strange scene at the end where it looks like they're kind of banding together as though they're going to somehow confront and try to fend off the cartels. But there's certainly no sense of triumphalism in that moment. There's no suggestion that they're going to succeed. And because the film does such a good job of like making this violence, it's so insidious, it really gets under your skin, that everything just feels fragile, precarious and dangerous. And so I found it a really terribly effective film, and I really enjoyed it.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I've been thinking about it a lot after I've seen it. It really left a mark on me. You know, and we've seen I mean, there are in cinema a lot of coming of age films, and sometimes it can be, I can sometimes have the feeling, oh, another coming of age film. But actually this one just had me involved in it throughout. You know, it felt really original, and I really liked the way that you know, there were times when you didn't know for sure what was going on, but you knew enough. You know, I think the film didn't over-explain anything. It just kind of immersed you in there, and you knew there was danger right from the start. You know, a very early scene where she's teaching the girl to lie in, you know, what looks like a grave, but turns out to be the place where she's going to hide. So you feel this danger right from the start, but it, you know, it's quite a long way into the film when you really start to piece together what's actually going on. But I think it's really well constructed. And on the subject of it, of the way it's made, I just think this film is so well made. You know, it's so engaging, just apart from the subject matter, which is completely compelling. It's made beautifully, this film. I mean, as you talked about, the kind of contrast between the horror and nature, the beauty of nature is just so, I think at the beginning we go from the scene of her lying in this hole to then this really lush picture of the insects on this green plant, and it's just such a contrast. And it's just, for me, it's just beautifully constructed, the way we bounce between this. You know, you get this beautiful view across the valleys. It's a beautiful place, and often they're sitting there in stillness, and it seems like they live in an idyllic place, but then, you know, it's contrasted with these terrible things that are happening. I thought the acting was superb, and I was really impressed with the switch in actors of the three girls. I thought that worked really well. It was totally, I was instantly convinced that they were the same people. So that was great. The acting was incredible. When the girls were having their hair cut and the tears come in their eyes, I just thought it was so well acted. They were such great actresses, those girls. And there was something about the colors in this film. I wrote down that the colors kind of give a sense of normality, you know, in this horrible situation where there's always imminent danger, that somehow the way this film is shot, and I don't really quite know what I mean by that. I mean, you know, that's what I wrote down, but it's like sometimes the colors just look so normal. I don't know, you know, but there's something about the color and light, the use of light in this film. It's extraordinary. I mean, I think I don't know, maybe I was just particularly sensitive, but I thought on the time I watched this, but I thought the cinematography in this film was breathtaking, actually. Obviously, you know, the coming of age theme, and you alluded to the fact that children, you know, are doing adult things, like the boys working in the quarry, and you know, we see the young girl at the beginning frying an egg on a gas thing. I mean, it looks like, you know, from that stage, we're already seeing her doing things which are quite grown up for a young child. But there's something about how I thought there was a really interesting contrast between how the parents were completely beaten down and had given up and were living in pure fear and just reacting, you know, just living life out of countering the fear, contrasted with the children who actually had a sense of community amongst themselves and had coping mechanisms. So although there was this horror, the children actually had fun together. The children had a proper community. It's funny you mention about the relationship between Anna and the boy, because I always felt that was quite nice. You know, that was a little bit flirty. They're knocking each other, they're play fighting. I didn't feel there was imminent danger there, but that's interesting when you say that. And I thought the teachers and education, the role of education here was really emphasized, as you say. The scenes in the classroom were lovely. I thought the music was amazing because actually it was very subtle, monotonal music through most of the film, which was, I mean, you might not call it music, you might call it sound effects, but for me it came just at the right moment. So overall, I was just really impressed with the way this film and really engaged with it. And I have been wondering afterwards whether the whole thing is a little bit of it's about more than just that terrible situation in Mexico of you know, children being stolen. But there's actually something here about women more generally, because actually the problems of Anna and her mother's family were not just about the circumstances they were in. There was also the husband has completely let them down. They couldn't get through to him. And when they did get through to him, you know, he was sending no money. So he had basically abandoned them. And that was, you know, presumably if he was sending them resources, they may well have been able to leave the town. Or so in fact, I think there's a deeper point here about treatment of women. And how difficult life can be. It was fine for the guy because he was off living presumably a good, easy life in America. So I thought, you know, all in all, it was just a really engaging film, beautifully made, really shocking and horrific, but, you know, just a really enjoyable experience. So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, Joe, I thought, I don't know if this is the case, I suppose this is testament to how good they were, but when the time switched, I thought it was the same actors and they made the film over a period of years. But it was only when you said that I thought that it occurred to me that that's not entirely credible. So I suppose they do switch actors, but yeah, it's done very seamlessly, isn't it?
Yeah, I checked at the end and they had two names. Wow. For each actress, so I kind of, because I wasn't certain. You know, I thought, oh, have they changed actors?
Yeah, well, that's how absorbing it was, I guess.
Yeah, I really liked Anna. I thought Anna was such a, well, the three girls, they were so, you know, I think that's what, it's such a horrific film, but there was something beautiful about their friendship and their support for each other. And you know, the way when one of them did get sprayed, the way the other two just ran to sort her out. There was a real support network, which didn't really seem to exist so much with the adults. You know, it's like the adults had given up. I thought that contrast was really interesting.
But there is, I think, a nice sense of community among the women within that hairdressers. You know, they look after each other's children, and you know,
Yeah.
there is a kind of solidarity among them. But you're certainly right. The contrast is extreme. You know, between the just about innocence of those young children and the weight bearing down on their mothers. And you know, there is something. It's a sort of classic thing to do, I suppose. But you care so much about those children that when the end finally comes, it's just devastating. You know, what is happening to them is unspeakable, and the film
Yeah.
does a fantastic job of making that very, very clear.
Yeah. Agreed. So both highly recommend.
Yeah, definitely. Very,
Yeah.
very strong movie.
What are we doing next?
Next is a film called Lucifer by Peter Brunner.
Looking forward to it.